Good evening, and welcome back. Come closer to the quiet edge of autumn, where the last gold leaves loosen from the branches and the fields breathe out the warmth they have kept all day. Imagine that you are walking slowly toward an old temple. At the border of the grainlands, its stones are pale beneath the moon. Its steps are softened by moss, wind, and time. Somewhere beyond it an owl calls once, then is still. The air smells of dry grass, dark soil, and smoke from a distant hearth. Nothing asks you to hurry here. Nothing demands that you speak. You may simply arrive as night arrives, without effort. Inside the temple, a small lamp has been left burning. Its flame leans and steadies, as if it too is breathing. The walls hold old painted shapes, almost faded away, sheaves of wheat, red poppies, a woman lifting a torch, a girl with flowers in her hands. The figures are not sharp. They seem to come forward only when you stop looking directly at them. That is often how old stories behave. They do not break the door open. They wait in the dimness until your thoughts grow soft enough to hear them. Tonight's story belongs to the season when the world begins to turn inward. It belongs to the lowering sun, the emptied orchard, the seed tucked beneath the earth. It belongs to a mother who searched with torches, a daughter who vanished into the unseen, and a queen who learned that darkness also has a language. This is the story of Persephone, who was once called Kore, meaning the maiden or the girl. It is also the story of Demeter, the grain mother, whose sorrow made the fields forget how to grow. Let the names come gently. Persephone is the name most remembered now, a name with deep roots and many old echoes. Kore is the tender name, the name of youth and springtime, the daughter walking among flowers before the shadow reaches her. Demeter is the mother of barley and wheat, the patient power in the furrow, the hand that teaches seed to open. Hades, whom some Greeks also called Aidoneus, is the unseen one, the lord below the world, ruler of the dead and of hidden wealth. These names are ancient, but tonight they need not be heavy. They can rest beside you like stones warmed by a long-forgotten sun. So settle more deeply. Let your shoulders loosen. Let the dark beyond the window become friendly and wide. This is not a tale of terror. The underworld we enter is solemn, not cruel for cruelty's sake. It is the place below roots, below memory, below the last sound of footsteps. It is quiet there, and because it is quiet, it can be frightening at first. Yet in old myth, what frightens the living is sometimes only what the living have not learned to listen to. Persephone will learn. She will learn slowly, with sorrow, with patience, and with the strange dignity of one who becomes more than what was done to her. Outside the temple, autumn gathers itself. The moon lays a silver road across the harvested fields. The stubble shines as if each cut stalk remembers summer. In the furrows, seeds wait in their small, shut houses. Above them, leaves fall without resistance. Beneath them, a deeper season begins, one no eye can follow. This is where our myth will end, but it is also where it begins. At the threshold between losing and keeping, between sleep and awakening, between the flower held in the hand and the root hidden under earth. Long before the first winter of grief, Demeter walked the bright earth with her daughter. In those days, the fields seemed to know their goddess by the sound of her feet. When Demeter crossed a plain, barley lifted its green blades. When she passed a vineyard, the leaves turned their pale undersides toward her, as though greeting rain. She wore no crown that needed gold to prove it. Her crown was the bending grain, the abundance of barns, the warm loaf broken at evening. Mortals thanked her without always knowing they did so each time they planted, reaped, ground, baked, and ate. Kore walked beside her, young as the first light on an April hill. She was not only a child, though the world loved to think of her that way. She had the inward listening of growing things. She knew which flowers opened at dawn and which preferred the mercy of shade. She knew the little music of bees hidden in clover. She knew that a seed, though small enough to rest on the tongue, carried a dream much larger than itself. Demeter taught her these things, but Kore also seemed to remember them from some place before words. Mother and daughter were often seen where the land rolled gently toward the sea. They walked through fields with their skirts brushing the grain. They paused beside springs where clear water trembled over pebbles. Demeter would kneel and press her palm into the soil, feeling its dampness, its hunger, its readiness. Kore would gather flowers, not greedily, but with a child's careful reverence, choosing one blossom and leaving another, as if each stem had spoken a preference. When villagers glimpsed them from a distance, they lowered their eyes. It is hard to look directly at joy when it belongs to gods. Demeter's love was not small or ornamental. It was the love of earth itself, protective, nourishing, sometimes fierce beneath its softness. She watched Kore as a field watches the weather. She listened for changes in the girl's voice the way a farmer listens for thunder beyond the hills. Yet she did not cage her. The old stories remember Kore wandering with companions, laughing among flowers, knowing the open meadow as her own bright chamber. To be loved by Demeter was to be rooted, but roots do not prevent branches from reaching into light. There were evenings when they rested together after the long work of blessing the fields. The sky would turn rose, then violet, then the deep blue of a bowl filled with water. Demeter would speak of seasons not as a circle drawn on a tablet, but as a breathing body. Spring was the first inhalation, summer was the full chest of the world, autumn was the giving away. Winter, she said, was not death exactly, though it wore death's quiet cloak. Winter was the closed hand around the seed. Kore listened, her flower basket beside her, never guessing how deeply she would one day understand. The mortals loved Kore too, though they did not always know her name. When girls braided wreaths in spring, they were close to her. When young brides crossed thresholds carrying flowers, she moved in the fragrance. When children ran through meadows until they fell laughing into the grass, their laughter brushed the hem of her garment. She belonged to beginnings, to petals, to the shining hour before choice becomes fate. But in Greek myth, beginnings are never untouched by endings. The bud already carries the memory of fruit. The spring path already curves toward the lower road. In those days, the earth was generous. Wheat stood high enough to hide a child. Poppies burned red along the edges of fields. The olive trees held their grey leaves like quiet prayers. Bees thickened the air around thyme and mountain flowers, moving from cup to cup with golden patience. At dawn, mist rose from the low places, and by noon the hills shone clear. Every household had its rituals. A handful of grain was offered before grinding. A small cake was set aside. A song was murmured at planting, because people understood that food came from labor, but labor needed blessing. Demeter received these gestures as a mother receives the sleep-heavy thanks of a child. She did not require magnificence. She was pleased by right measure, by gratitude, by the farmer who saved seed instead of eating all, by the baker who remembered the hungry neighbor, by the village that honored the dead before cutting the first sheaf. Her power lived in continuity. One harvest fed the next planting. One mother's teaching passed into one daughter's hand. One loaf carried the summer into winter. Through such humble circles the world held together. Kore learned the sacredness of small things. She learned that an anemone may close before rain. She learned that hyacinths carry sorrow in some tales, and violets carry a sweetness almost too brief to trust. She learned that the narcissus bends toward its own reflection, pale and scented, beautiful in a way that makes the heart uneasy. Demeter named the flowers, and Kore repeated them, not like a student memorizing a lesson, but like someone greeting a crowd of friends. Each name made the meadow more intimate. Sometimes Kore asked about the realm below. Children of light often ask about darkness, not because they wish to enter it, but because they feel its outline at the edge of every story. Demeter would answer carefully. She spoke of Hades as the unseen lord, brother to Zeus of the sky and Poseidon of the sea. She said his kingdom lay beneath the earth, where the dead went when breath had left them. She did not describe it as punishment alone. It was older and wider than that. It was a house of shadows, a place of remembering, a place where all mortal journeys finally lowered their lamps. Kore listened with solemn eyes. Then a butterfly would pass, and she would turn back to the sun. This was not foolishness. The living must turn back to the sun. If every child stared too long into the underworld, no flowers would be gathered, no songs learned, no hands warmed in daylight. So Kore returned to her wreaths and companions, and Demeter let the matter drift away like chaff on a warm breeze. Some knowledge ripens only when the hour is terrible enough to open it. Above them Olympus gleamed in its remote weather. Zeus watched from his throne of cloud and thunder, ruler of gods, keeper of order, though his order was often shaped by secrecy. The gods had their councils, their bargains, their silences. In some old tellings, Zeus had already given consent to Hades, his dark brother, to take Kore as a bride. If Demeter knew nothing of this, it was because the sky can keep its decisions far above the field. A mother may read the soil and still not read the mind of heaven. So the world continued bright on the surface, fated underneath. The grain thickened, the flowers opened, the rivers carried sunlight in broken pieces. Kore laughed with her companions and filled her basket with blossoms. Demeter moved through the land, giving abundance. No sign appeared in the clouds, no warning was written on the leaves. That is one of the oldest sorrows in myth and in life. The day before everything changes often looks like any other day. The Meadow of Nysa lay far enough from Demeter's immediate gaze to feel like freedom, yet near enough to the known world that no one feared it. It was a place of soft grass, spring water, and flowers in such profusion that the eye could not settle. Roses opened beside crocus, iris beside hyacinth, violets underfoot like fragments of evening sky. The air was warm, and the mountain slopes held the light gently, as if the whole place had been made for laughter. Kore came there with the daughters of ocean, bright companions of water and wandering. They moved through the meadow with baskets on their arms, calling to one another in voices that rose and fell like birds. One gathered saffron crocus, another chose lilies, Another braided stems into a wreath and held it up to see how the colours pleased each other. Kore knelt often, touching the petals before she picked them. She was not in haste. The meadow seemed endless, and youth often believes that beauty can be gathered forever without changing shape. Above them, the sky was clear. Beneath them, the deep earth waited with a silence no one heard. Then Gaia, the earth herself, brought forth a flower unlike the others. She did this at the will of Zeus, so the old hymn says, and the flower rose as a wonder and a snare. It was a narcissus, but more radiant than any mortal narcissus, with 100 blooms from a single root, shining with pale fire. Its fragrance spread across the meadow and into the bright air. Even the sky seemed to pause. Even the sea, far away, might have felt that sweetness tremble along its surface. It was beauty made too perfect. Beauty with a hidden door inside it. Kore saw it and grew still. Her companions were scattered among the other flowers, each absorbed in her own small harvest. The narcissus drew Kore nearer, not by force that could be seen, but by the old spell of wonder. She reached toward it. Perhaps she thought of placing it in Demeter's hands. Perhaps she thought of wearing it at her breast. Perhaps she thought nothing at all, because some moments are so bright that thought falls silent. Her fingers closed around the stem. At that instant, the earth opened, not with the cruelty of a wound, but with the authority of a gate that had been waiting for its hour. The meadow split, the flowers trembled, and from below came the dark chariot of Hades, lord of the unseen. His horses were shadowed and swift. His face was grave. He did not belong to sunlight, and yet he was not chaos. He was a king entering the upper world by a path allowed to him, a path made by the will of powers older than pity. Kore cried out. Let the cry remain distant, softened by the long passage of myth. It reached the mountains. It touched the sea. Hecate, the goddess who keeps to crossroads and moonlit thresholds, heard it from her cave, but she did not see the one who took the maiden. Helios, the sun who sees from above, saw more. Demeter felt something tear in the fabric of the day, though she did not yet know where to place her grief. The companions turned, but the meadow had already changed. Hades lifted Kore into the chariot and the horses rushed downward. The bright flowers folded behind them. The opening closed. Grass lay over the place as if nothing had happened, which is sometimes the most frightening part of loss. The world looked smooth again too quickly. A basket lay overturned. Blossoms spilled from it in a small, silent arc. The narcissus still breathed its heavy sweetness. Above, the sky remained blue. Below, the road of darkness received the maiden who would one day be queen. Demeter heard the cry, but not the answer. She came like a storm through the fields, calling her daughter's name. Kore, Persephone, child of the bright meadow. No voice returned. She searched the hills first, then the valleys, then the shore where waves broke in white lines and withdrew. She asked the trees, but they only shivered. She asked the rivers, but they hurried over stones. She asked the girls who had gathered flowers, and they wept, for they had seen the ground close and the maiden vanish, yet they could not tell the whole of it. For 9 days Demeter wandered with torches in her hands. 9 nights she did not taste nectar. She did not accept ambrosia. She did not wash grief from her face. The torches burned in daylight and darkness, twin flames of a mother's refusal. She crossed mountains. She entered groves. She passed cities where mortals hid in doorways, sensing that a goddess in mourning is more terrible than an army. Her hair loosened, her robe darkened with dust. Every road became the wrong road because none led to Kore. On the 10th day, Hecate came to her, carrying a torch. Hecate is a goddess of thresholds, of 3 ways, of nights when a traveller does not know which path to take. She had heard the cry, she said, but had not seen the face of the taker. Together the 2 goddesses went to Helios, who travels the high road of the sky and looks down upon all that daylight touches. If anyone had seen, it was he. The sun cannot comfort, but it can reveal. Helios told Demeter what he had witnessed. Hades had taken Kore beneath the earth, and Zeus had known. The words fell like stones into a well. Demeter's grief changed then. Before it had been frantic, searching, unable to rest. Now it became vast and cold. Betrayal entered it. The sky had made a bargain without the mother's consent. The unseen realm had received her daughter. The meadow had been only the surface of a decision made elsewhere. Demeter turned away from Olympus. When a human mother grieves, the house changes. Food remains uneaten. A cup sits where a hand left it. The bed does not warm. When Demeter grieved, the world changed. She withdrew her blessing from the fields. Seeds lay in the soil but did not stir. Shoots yellowed, leaves curled. The plough cut earth that would not answer. Farmers looked up at the empty sky, then down at the stubborn ground, and fear moved through villages like a wind with no sound. This was the first great winter, not merely a season of cold, but a refusal of life to continue as if nothing had happened. Demeter would not let the world pretend. No golden grain, no swelling fruit, no easy harvest would cover the absence of Kore. The earth became an image of the mother's heart. Bare fields, silent orchards, hard clods, lamps burning late in houses where people counted their remaining stores. The gods on Olympus began to understand that one hidden bargain could starve the altars of heaven. Yet grief did not make Demeter empty of tenderness. It made her tenderness homeless. In some tellings, she came to Eleusis, disguised as an old woman, and sat by a well. The daughters of a king found her there, sorrowful and veiled. They did not know she was a goddess. They saw only a stranger worn by loss. This, too, belongs to the mystery of the story. Divinity seated beside a well waiting to be invited indoors, carrying a grief too large for any mortal room. At Eleusis, Demeter entered the house of Celeus and Metanira. She became nurse to their young son, Demephon, and for a little while the movements of care steadied her. She held the child. She anointed him. She breathed over him with immortal tenderness. By night, in some versions, she placed him in the fire to burn away his mortality, not to harm him, but to make him deathless. His mother cried out in fear, and the rite was broken. Human love, startled by what it cannot understand, interrupted divine intention. Demeter revealed herself then, shining with a beauty that filled the house like lightning held still. She commanded that a temple be built for her at Eleusis. There she sat apart, mourning, while the earth continued to fail. The story leans close to mystery here, to rites later called the Eleusinian Mysteries, sacred ceremonies of Demeter and Persephone. We will not pretend to open what was meant to be veiled. It is enough to say that those mysteries taught many Greeks to think differently about death, descent, return, and the seed hidden under the soil. In the temple, Demeter's sorrow became a power. Mortals came near with offerings, but no offering could replace the missing daughter. Smoke rose from altars into a sky that had grown uncertain. The cattle grew thin, the granaries emptied. Children asked why bread had become so rare. Old people saved their portions for the young. Songs stopped in the fields because there was no work for singing. Even kings learned that their crowns had no meaning if the furrows remained barren. Olympus felt the hunger below. The gods depend upon mortal honor, upon sacrifice, upon the fragrant smoke that rises from full households. If humans starved, who would pour wine for the deathless ones? Who would lift barley and salt? Zeus sent messages to Demeter, gifts, promises, words polished like bright stones. Demeter refused them. She would not return abundance to the earth until she saw her daughter again. Her demand was simple, and because it was simple, no argument could wear it down. This is one reason the myth endures. It does not make grief polite. It does not ask the bereaved mother to smile for the comfort of heaven. Demeter's mourning becomes cosmic because love itself has cosmic weight. The field and the heart are not separate. The bread on the table and the child in the doorway belong to one order of care. When that order is broken, the whole world knows. Even the gods must listen when the grain refuses to rise. Meanwhile, beneath all this hunger and negotiation, Kore was learning another world. The story often turns quickly from her taking to her return, as if the underworld were only a chamber where she waited. But waiting can be an education. Silence can be a teacher. The maiden who entered the dark did not remain untouched by it. Every hour below the roots changed the shape of her listening. The road to the underworld was not a single road. It was a deepening. First, the last grass vanished. Then the roots of trees appeared above like dark veins in a ceiling of soil. Then stone closed around the chariot, and the sound of the upper world thinned until it was only memory. Kore held herself very still. Behind her lay the meadow, Demeter, sunlight, companions, the overturned basket. Before her lay a kingdom she had heard, named only in caution. The horses ran without stumbling. They knew the way beneath all ways. At last, the gates of Hades rose ahead, vast and quiet. They were not decorated to impress the living. They did not need to be. The dead come whether gates are splendid or plain. Beyond them stretched the realm of shadows, with rivers moving through dim country. Styx, the solemn river of oath, Acheron, river of sorrow, Lethe, river of forgetting, and others whose names tasted of old prayers. The air was cool, no sun stood overhead, yet there was a kind of light, grey and inward, like the last glow left in ash. Kore stepped down from the chariot and became aware of eyes, though not all eyes were visible. The dead were near. Some were only outlines. Some kept the gestures of the lives they had left. A woman smoothing a robe, a soldier touching an absent wound, a child reaching for a hand no longer there. They did not rush at her. They did not howl. They watched with the weary curiosity of those who have already passed through fear and found it changed into waiting. Hades brought her into his house, a palace of shadowed stone and hidden wealth. Gold slept in the walls. Black pillars rose like tree trunks in a forest without leaves. Lamps burned with a pale blue flame. There were seats for judges, halls for gathering, chambers where no mortal guest had ever walked breathing. Hades spoke to her with formal honor. He called her bride. He called her queen. The words did not comfort her. A throne can be a prison when the heart is still standing in a meadow. Kore did not become Persephone in a single moment. Names ripen slowly, especially names that carry power. At first, she was the girl who had been taken. She wept for Demeter. She turned away from food. She listened for any sound from above and heard only the deep movement of underground rivers. The attendants of Hades moved softly around her. They did not know how to console spring. What does one say to a flower brought below the frost line? And yet the underworld was not empty of order. This was the first lesson. The dead arrived in confusion, but they were received. Paths led somewhere. Oaths mattered. Memory mattered. Mourning mattered. The realm was not merely a pit beneath life, but the hidden underside of life, the place where every story was brought when its last page had been turned. Kore began to see that Hades ruled not a kingdom of monsters, but a kingdom of endings, and endings require a ruler who does not look away. She learned to walk the halls at a measured pace. She learned not to startle when a shade passed through a doorway without opening it. She learned the names of those who served the house, careful attendants, silent guards, ancient powers older than the Olympian brightness. She learned that Cerberus, the hound at the gate, was terrifying only if one tried to flee the order of death. To those who belonged within the law of the place, he was watchful, immense, and strangely patient. The language of the underworld is not spoken first with the mouth, it is spoken by pausing. It is spoken by allowing a silence to finish. In the upper world, Kore had known the quick language of petals, bees, girls calling across meadows. Below, she learned the slow grammar of ash, stone, and remembered names. A shade might stand before her, unable to say why it lingered. If she waited, truly waited, the reason would emerge. An unburied body, an oath broken, a child left behind, a song unfinished. At first, these stories wounded her. Each grief seemed to find the fresh grief in her and press upon it. But over time, she understood that listening did not mean drowning. A queen of the dead must have a heart with doors, not walls. Doors can open and close. Doors can admit sorrow without letting sorrow destroy the house. Kore, still missing her mother, still longing for son, began to practice this difficult mercy. She listened, and the dead felt themselves less alone. Hades watched from his dark throne. He was not a warm god. Warmth belonged to hearth, skin, noon, bread. Hades belonged to inevitability. But he was not foolish, and he saw that the maiden brought something his kingdom lacked. Before her, the underworld had order, wealth, law, and depth. With her, it began to have a gentler threshold. The newly dead, especially the young, turned toward her as they might turn toward a lamp glimpsed through fog. There were gardens below, though not gardens like those of the sun. Their plants were pale, their leaves seemed carved from moonlight and smoke. Asphodel grew in wide fields, its blossoms neither bright nor colourless, but like memory itself. Kore walked there and thought of Nysa. She touched the underworld flowers and found them cool beneath her fingers. They did not open to bees. They did not follow the sun, yet they endured. Their endurance was another kind of beauty, one the upper world rarely praised. Sometimes she dreamed of Demeter. In the dream, her mother crossed a field with torches in both hands, though the field was covered in snow. Kore tried to call, but the dream filled her mouth with pomegranate seeds, red and shining. She woke in the blue-white lamplight of Hades' palace with tears on her face. Even queens may wake afraid, even goddesses may reach into darkness for a hand that is not there. The dead began to whisper a different name, Persephone. The sound moved through the halls like water finding a hidden channel. The name was not a simple replacement for Kore. It did not erase the meadow girl. It gathered her into a larger shape. Persephone could remember flowers and still sit beside the dead. Persephone could love Demeter and still learn the laws of Hades. Persephone could be wounded and still become sovereign. This is not the same as saying the wound was good. It is saying that her life did not end at the wound. In time, she asked questions. Where did each river rise? Why did some shades remember and others fade? Who judged the arrogant, the oathbreaker, the cruel king? What comfort could be offered to the ordinary dead who had not been heroes or villains, but simply human? Hades answered with the patience of one explaining stone to rain. The Furies, the Erinyes, moved in the deeper courts. Minos and other judges weighed lives in stern balance. But there were also fields of quiet where common souls rested in the dimness, neither celebrated nor tormented, simply released from striving. Persephone learned that death makes all crowns modest. The shepherd, the queen, the singer, the infant, the warrior, the thief, the woman who carried water every morning for 50 years, all came at last to the lower road. Their names entered the same hush. Some arrived still clinging to the shape of their importance. Some arrived bewildered that pain had ceased. Some arrived angry at the body left behind. Persephone learned to hear not only what they said, but what they had not known how to say while living. Above, Demeter's winter deepened. Snow lay where grain should have risen. The olive groves held their fruit tight and bitter. Rivers ran thin under ice. Mothers broke the last bread into smaller and smaller pieces. Men who had once boasted of strength stood helpless before empty fields. The animals grew quiet in their stalls. Even the temples seemed cold. Smoke from sacrifice thinned, because there was less to offer. Hunger made philosophy simple. Without Demeter, neither palace nor hut could endure. Zeus looked down and saw not only sorrow, but danger to the order he ruled. The gods could not feast forever above a starving world. He had allowed the marriage into the underworld, but he had not measured the cost of Demeter's love. Power often misjudges love because love does not behave like a political arrangement. It does not accept balance when the beloved has vanished. It does not call silence peace. At last, Zeus understood that he must send for the daughter, or watch the earth grow still. He chose Hermes the guide, the messenger with winged sandals and a traveler's clever eyes. Hermes moves between worlds more easily than most gods. He knows roads, doors, bargains, thieves, shepherds, dreams, and the last path of souls. He can speak to kings without becoming heavy, and to the dead without losing his way. Zeus gave him the command, go below, speak to Hades, and bring Persephone back if she has not eaten the food of the dead. That condition mattered. In ancient thought, to eat in a place was to belong partly to that place. Food is not only nourishment, it is covenant. Bread shared under a roof makes guest and host known to each other. Salt binds. Wine remembers the cup. In the underworld, food was more binding still. If Persephone had taken nothing, perhaps she could leave entirely. If she had eaten, the lower realm would have a claim. So the fate of seasons gathered around the question of a mouthful. Hermes descended. He passed through the bright air, then through cloud, then through the folded darkness under mountains. His sandals flashed faintly where no sun could see them. He came to the gates and was admitted, for he too serves the boundary between life and death. The dead watched him pass with recognition. Many had followed him once, newly freed from breath, down the long road. Now he came not as escort to the dead, but as envoy for a living grief. He found Hades in his hall and Persephone beside him. The sight gave Hermes pause. She was changed. She was still the daughter Demeter mourned, still young, still carrying the memory of flowers, yet the underworld had placed a shadowed crown upon her presence, even before any crown touched her hair. She looked like someone who had wept and listened and learned. She looked like someone who had been made to cross a threshold and had begun, unwillingly at first, to understand its power. Hermes delivered Zeus's command. Hades heard him without rage. The Lord below is not often surprised. He knew the hunger above. He knew Demeter's refusal. He knew the old laws that bind even gods, perhaps especially gods, because immortal powers must keep the shape of the world from breaking. He agreed that Persephone should return to her mother. The hall seemed to exhale, though no living wind moved in it. Before she left, there was the pomegranate. The old sources differ in mood, and the fruit keeps its ambiguity. Some say Hades secretly gave her the seeds. Some say he persuaded her gently. Some later hearts imagine that Persephone, already changed, accepted them with a knowledge she could not yet fully name. We do not need to force the fruit into one narrow meaning. Myth often preserves truth by refusing to become simple. The pomegranate is hunger, fate, marriage, bloodless redness, memory, and choice, all folded into a small, bright chamber. Picture the fruit opened in the dim palace. Its rind is dull from the outside, but within it are jeweled seeds, each one shining as if it has stored a drop of sunset. In the upper world, pomegranates ripen as summer leans toward autumn. They are fruits of thresholds, their red interior hidden until broken. Persephone looked at the seeds. Perhaps she thought of the meadow flowers, how beauty had once opened a door beneath her feet. Perhaps she thought of Demeter starving the earth for love. Perhaps she thought of the dead who had begun to know her face. She ate. The number changes from telling to telling. Some say 6 seeds, some say 4. Some say a small measure enough to bind, but not enough to keep her always. Let it be 6 tonight, 1 for each month of the darker half in later imagination, though Greek seasons did not always divide themselves so neatly. 6 small seeds, cool against the tongue, 6 sparks of red in the grey realm, 6 quiet promises that the upper world would not keep her forever, and the lower world would not lose her entirely. Was it a trick? Was it a choice? Was it both? Sleepy listener, you do not have to decide now. Let the question rest. Many lives contain such moments when what happens to us and what we choose afterward are braided too tightly to separate. Persephone did not choose the opening of the earth. She did not choose her mother's anguish. But within the house of Hades, she began to choose how she would stand, how she would listen, how she would carry her name. The seeds belonged to that difficult middle place. Hades prepared his chariot again, not with the violence of arrival, but with the solemnity of departure. Hermes stood ready to guide the way. Persephone turned once to the halls she had feared. The dead watched from the edges of shadow. Some lifted their faces as if a star were moving away from them. She understood then that leaving would also be a kind of sorrow. This did not cancel her longing for Demeter. It only made her heart larger and more divided, which is often what maturity does. The road upward opened. The horses climbed through dark passages, past roots and stones and sleeping seeds. Persephone felt the air change before she saw light. It grew less still. It carried moisture, leaf mold, distant smoke, and the faint mineral scent of rain. Then a line of brightness appeared ahead, thin as a blade, widening, widening, until the chariot rose from the earth, and the upper world poured around her. Even winter light was dazzling after the underworld. Demeter saw her daughter and ran. Forget the dignity of gods for a moment, forget temples, altars, titles, hymns. A mother saw the child she had searched for through 9 days and endless nights of grief. Persephone stepped down and Demeter gathered her in. The torches fell. The cold fields held their breath. No speech was large enough, so the first language was touch, arms, hair, face, the proof of presence. Kore, Persephone, daughter, queen, lost one, found one, all the names dissolved into the embrace. The earth felt it. Beneath snow and hard soil, seeds stirred. Sap remembered its path. The roots of grasses sent tiny white threads into the dark. In orchards, buds formed like thoughts too shy to speak. Rivers loosened. Birds tested the air. Demeter's joy moved outward in circles, not all at once, but with the inevitability of dawn. Mortals woke to a change they could not yet explain. The world had not been healed completely, but it had been given permission to begin. Then came the question: had Persephone eaten anything below? Demeter's joy trembled. Persephone told the truth of the pomegranate seeds. The old law stood. Because she had eaten in the underworld, she could not remain forever above. Because Demeter's grief had nearly ended the world, she could not be kept forever below. A compromise took shape, not perfect, not painless, but livable. Persephone would spend part of the year with her mother and part with Hades as queen of the unseen. Demeter's heart resisted. Of course it did. A calendar is no comfort when love wants wholeness, yet even Demeter could not undo every binding. The gods spoke of order. The earth waited. Persephone herself stood between them, no longer simply the girl who had vanished, but the one who knew both sides of the route. She had seen the hunger of the living and the patience of the dead. She had learned that some returns do not restore the past. They create a future with a seam in it. So the seasons were born from an arrangement of love and loss. When Persephone rises, Demeter rejoices and the earth opens in green. Flowers return, not as if nothing happened, but as if beauty has learned courage. Grain lifts its head. Bees resume their golden labor. Young animals step uncertainly into fields. Songs come back to the threshing floor. Mothers place bread before children, with relief so deep it becomes prayer. Spring is not innocence after Persephone. Spring is reunion after knowledge. When Persephone descends, Demeter mourns again, but not with the first wild ignorance. This sorrow has a shape. The leaves turn, the fields empty, the fruit is stored, the seed is covered. The world does not die in panic, it withdraws in ritual. Autumn becomes the long farewell, winter the chamber of waiting. Every year the loss returns, and every year so does the promise. The myth teaches that grief may become a season, and a season, though hard, is not forever. Mother and daughter learn to meet at thresholds. Perhaps Demeter walked with Persephone to the place where the road begins to slope downward. Perhaps they spoke little there, because farewell has a way of making speech clumsy. Perhaps Demeter adjusted her daughter's veil as mothers do, even when the daughter is a queen. Perhaps Persephone looked back once, then continued, not because she loved the upper world less, but because the lower world had also become hers to tend. In the underworld, Persephone's throne stood beside that of Hades, but her power was not merely borrowed from him. It grew from her passage. She knew what it was to be torn from light, and so she understood the bewilderment of the newly dead. She knew what it was to long for a mother, and so she understood souls who called for names that could not answer. She knew flowers and roots, and so she understood that what is buried is not always gone. This knowledge made her a queen unlike any other. The dead came before her. Some were kings who had expected the afterlife to honor their crowns. Some were women who had died in childbirth, still listening for infants. Some were sailors who remembered the green lift of waves. Some were children who had not yet learned why play had stopped. Persephone received them with solemn gentleness. She could not return all of them to life. That was not her office, but she could make the first darkness less lonely. She could let a soul be seen. In later stories, heroes who entered Hades often hoped for Persephone's mercy. Orpheus sang before the rulers below, asking for Eurydice. Heracles came on impossible labor. Theseus and Piritaus learned that the underworld is not a place to be seized by arrogance. In such tales, Persephone appears as a power to be honored carefully. She is not decoration in Hades' hall. She is the dread queen, the holy one, the one whose compassion does not make her weak, and whose darkness does not make her cruel. The Orphic hymns and mystery traditions remembered her with reverence. They spoke in veiled tones, as one speaks near a sleeping child or a sacred flame. Persephone belonged to descent and return, to the soul's journey, to the hope that death might contain more than blank ending. We will not claim to know what initiates saw in the secret rites, but we can feel the outline. Grain cut and reborn, a maiden lost and restored, a queen below, a mother above, and the human heart standing between fear and trust. Persephone's crown, if you imagine it, should not be only gold. Let it be woven of asphodel, wheat, and pomegranate rind. Let there be a Narcissus there too, not as a trap now, but as a memory transformed. Let the crown hold both spring rain and winter ash. Let it show that sovereignty is not always brightness. Sometimes sovereignty is the ability to sit in the dark without becoming empty, to hear sorrow without turning away, to remember the meadow while ruling the shadowed hall. Hades himself was changed by her presence, though he remained Hades. Myths need not turn him into a gentle prince to make Persephone powerful. He is the unseen lord, stern, wealthy, remote. Yet beside him sits a queen who knows the living world from within. Through her, the underworld gains a doorway of recognition. Through him, she gains a realm where her changed self has authority. Their marriage remains troubling, ancient, and shadowed, but Persephone's queenship exceeds the wound of its beginning. This matters. Many tellings linger only on the maiden taken, and that part must not be softened into nothing. The taking was a rupture. Demeter's grief was righteous, Kore's fear was real. But if the story stops there, Persephone remains forever at the moment of loss. The older myth carries her further. She becomes the one mortals invoke with awe. She becomes the keeper of thresholds. She becomes the queen whose return greens the earth and whose descent teaches the seed to sleep. Each year, when the first warmth touches the fields, Persephone rises. Imagine the road opening upward beneath a hillside. Imagine her stepping into morning while dew trembles on young grass. Demeter feels her before she sees her. The grain mother lifts her head and the world brightens from within. The reunion is not noisy at first. It is the quiet astonishment of presence after absence. Then everything begins. Almond blossom, crocus, lambs, bees, thawing streams, the first green haze over branches. In spring, the living sometimes forget winter quickly. That is mercy. If the heart remembered cold with perfect sharpness every moment, it could not open. Persephone allows forgetting, but not complete forgetting. Under every blossom is the knowledge that blossoms pass. This knowledge does not ruin beauty, it deepens it. A flower is more precious because it is brief. A warm hand is more sacred because hands must one day let go. The myth does not ask us to cling, it asks us to notice. Summer follows full and golden. Demeter's fields rise high. Persephone walks among them with her mother, and perhaps for a while the lower kingdom grows distant, like a dream at noon. Mortals harvest early fruits, children run in dust, the sea flashes blue. At night stars scatter over rooftops, and the smell of cut hay enters sleep. Yet even in summer the pomegranate is forming somewhere, green at first, then slowly reddening, preparing its hidden chambers. The cycle keeps its own counsel. Then comes the first sign. A leaf yellows at the edge, a swallow gathers with others on a wire, the light lowers, becoming honey-coloured and slant. Grapes darken, figs split. The air in the morning carries a coolness that was not there before. Demeter feels the change and grows quiet. Persephone feels it too. Her two worlds begin calling at once. Above, the fields still shine. Below, the dead wait for their queen. Neither call is false. Autumn is the season of beautiful surrender. Trees release what they spent months making. Fields give their grain to the sickle. Vines give fruit to the press. The world becomes fragrant with endings, apples in storage, smoke in the lane, damp leaves underfoot, the mineral smell of rain on stone. Persephone prepares to descend. She does not go as the frightened maiden of Nysa now. She goes robed in knowledge, carrying spring within her, like a lamp covered by the hand. Demeter mourns, and the earth follows her. But this mourning has become part of the sacred order. The farmer covers seed, the household stores grain, the village tells stories by firelight. Work turns inward, mending nets, sharpening tools, weaving cloth, remembering ancestors. Winter strips the world down to what is essential: a bowl of soup, a blanket, a voice in the dark, the patience to wait. These humble things are also Persephone's gifts, because without descent there would be no season of hidden repair. Below, Persephone returns to her throne. The dead lift their faces. New souls arrive, frightened by the strangeness of being without breath. She receives them. She has walked both directions and knows the ache of each. To the old who are tired, she offers rest. To the young who are confused, she offers presence. To the proud, she offers the truth that no one carries earthly power through the gate unchanged. To the grieving dead, she offers the strange comfort that grief is not only above, it is understood below as well. If you listen closely to Winter, you may hear her language. It is in the muffled field under snow. It is in the bare branch that seems lifeless, but holds buds, sealed tight. It is in the long night, when the house settles and no one speaks. It is in the root-taking nourishment from darkness. The language says, not yet. It says, lower your head. It says, what is hidden is not always lost. It says, sleep can be a form of keeping. The Greeks who told this story lived close to the rhythms of planting and hunger. They knew that civilization rests on grain, and grain rests on mysteries no hand can command completely. You can plow, sow, weed, and pray, but the seed opens in secret. No farmer sees the exact moment when the husk gives way. No mother sees the exact moment when childhood becomes something else. No mourner sees the hidden work by which grief, over years, becomes wisdom. Persephone's myth gathers all these unseen openings into one sacred descent. Demeter, too, is changed by the cycle. She remains the mother who loves fiercely. She remains the goddess who can withhold abundance when wronged. But she also becomes the teacher of rites, the giver of grain, and perhaps of deeper hope. At Eleusis, her sorrow becomes instruction. The people who honored her did not receive an escape from death, at least not in any simple sense. They received a way to stand before death with a different heart. The seed goes down, the shoot returns, the daughter descends, the daughter rises. Hecate remains near the edges of the tale, torch-bearing and watchful. She heard the cry when others did not. She accompanied Demeter to Helios. In some traditions, she becomes Persephone's attendant and companion, a goddess of crossroads, serving the queen of the greatest threshold. Her presence reminds us that when a life changes direction, we need guides who understand the crossing. Not every helper can prevent the loss. Some helpers arrive with a lamp and stay beside us while we learn where the road has gone. Helios, the witness, has his own cold mercy. He sees, and because he sees, the hidden bargain cannot remain hidden forever. In human life, witness matters. A grief denied grows heavier. A wrong unnamed wanders like a ghost. Helios does not undo what happened, but he tells Demeter the truth. The truth wounds her, yet it also gives her sorrow a shape. To know where the beloved has gone is not the same as having her back, but it is the beginning of a demand that can be heard by heaven. Hermes, guide of roads, shows another kind of mercy. He does not rule the sky or the grain or the dead. He moves, he carries messages across impossible distances. In the myth, his descent proves that no realm is sealed against all communication. Even when a door seems absolute, some god of thresholds may know a path. This is a gentle thought for night. Not every separation is wordless forever. Somewhere a messenger may be walking the road between what was lost and what can return. Zeus is not the comfort of this story. He is power learning consequence. His consent begins the crisis, and his command helps resolve it. Myth does not always give us perfect gods. Often it gives us divine figures large enough to hold human contradictions. Authority and blindness, order and harm, repair and compromise. Persephone's story survives not because every god behaves well, but because the broken order is forced to answer to grief. The sky must negotiate with the field, and Hades, the unseen one, remains the necessary darkness. No one loves the underworld as they love a meadow in spring, yet the lower realm has its place. Without it, where would the dead go? Where would buried seeds wait? Where would hidden wealth sleep until drawn upward? The Greeks knew that the same earth that receives bodies also gives grain. Hades and Demeter are not simple opposites. They are two powers facing each other across the mystery of what goes down and what comes up. Persephone stands between them. She is the bridge no one planned kindly. Yet once she exists, the cosmos depends on her passage. She carries Demeter's green memory into Hades' halls. She carries underworld knowledge back into spring. When she walks upward, the dead are not destroyed, but the living are renewed. When she walks downward, the living are not abandoned, but taught to wait. Her footsteps make the year intelligible. There is another quiet truth inside the myth. Persephone does not belong to 1 hour only. She is not only the bright girl bending over a flower, and not only the dark queen beside the throne, she is the motion between them. Many ancient powers are fixed in their places. The sea remains the sea, the sky remains the sky, the hearth remains the hearth. Persephone travels. Her holiness is not stillness, but passage. She knows the road by walking it again and again. Because she travels, she understands those who are between. The young person no longer a child, but not yet settled into adulthood. The mourner no longer living in the first shock, but not yet healed. The exile who remembers one country while learning the weather of another. The soul at the edge of sleep, leaving the sharp room of waking but not yet dreaming. These are Persephone's people too, not because they are dead, but because they stand at thresholds. The ancient Greeks often thought in thresholds. Doorways were sacred, crossroads were dangerous and holy. The boundary of a field mattered. The line between guest and stranger mattered. Birth, marriage, death, planting, harvest, departure, return, each required words, offerings, gestures, and care. Persephone's story gathers many thresholds into one body, maiden to queen, daughter to wife, upper world to lower world, flower to fruit, seed to bread, grief to ritual, winter to spring. In this way, the myth can be heard not as an explanation alone, but as a map for the heart. It says that change may feel like being taken from a meadow. It says that a mother may rage against heaven when love is wounded. It says that some bargains made by the powerful will be answered by the hunger of the earth. It says that the one who descends may learn a language no one above can teach. And it says that return is real, though return is not the same as being unchanged. Think of Demeter during Persephone's first return, studying her daughter in the renewed light. She would have seen familiar things, the curve of the face, the eyes she had loved since infancy, the hands that once held flowers without sorrow. But she would also have seen a depth that had not been there before. The mother might have wanted to wipe the underworld from her child's gaze. Love often wants to do this. It wants to remove every shadow. Yet some shadows become part of the beloved's strength. Persephone, for her part, may have watched Demeter differently too. Before, she had known her mother as warmth, grain, instruction, and protection. After the descent, she knew Demeter as a power capable of stopping the world. She knew the cost of being loved by such a goddess. She knew that her absence had entered every root and loaf. This knowledge is heavy, but it is also intimate. Mother and daughter met again with childhood behind them, and with a deeper reverence between them. The myth does not tell us every conversation they had. Perhaps that is mercy. Some reunions are too private for poetry. We can imagine only fragments. Demeter asking whether the lower halls were cold, Persephone answering that cold is different there. Persephone asking whether the fields truly failed, Demeter looking away, Demeter touching her daughter's hair while pretending to arrange it, Persephone holding her mother's hand a little longer than before, around them, the earth listening. At Eleusis, the people remembered. They built and gathered and carried sacred things. They learned that grain is not merely food, but a sign. A stalk of wheat is sunlight made edible, rain made visible, earth made generous. When the stalk is cut, it seems ended. When the seed is buried, it seems lost. Yet from cutting and burial comes the next bread. This was not a shallow comfort, it was a discipline of hope, repeated each year with aching seriousness. The mysteries associated with Demeter and Persephone were guarded by silence. Those who were initiated were forbidden to reveal what they had seen and heard. That silence has lasted for centuries, a locked door in the house of history. We should respect it. Still, silence itself can teach. A secret does not always exclude. Sometimes it protects depth from becoming decoration. The myth we can tell remains on the outer steps, listening to the muffled hymn within. Imagine a procession in the old world, moving by torchlight along a sacred road, feet in dust, lamps in the dark, voices chanting names that had been chanted by grandparents and their grandparents before them. Somewhere in the ceremony, sorrow and hope met without cancelling each other. The participants did not become immortal in the simple way children imagine immortality. They became perhaps less alone before mortality. They carried a story in which the Queen of the Dead also returns with spring. This is why Persephone can be both dreaded and beloved. People did not speak her name carelessly in every place. The queen below is powerful. To call upon her is to remember that every living body is temporary. Yet she is beloved because she has a human tenderness folded inside divine authority. She has known rupture. She has known longing. She has known the upper air after long darkness. When mortals approach her, they approach someone who understands that fear and dignity can dwell in the same soul. There is no need to make the underworld pretty. It is not a meadow painted grey. It is the realm of those who have left the sun. But neither must it be made grotesque. Old Hades is a place of seriousness. Its terror comes from finality, not spectacle. Its quiet corridors ask the living to release their noise. Its rivers carry away the insistence that we can control everything. In that place, Persephone's presence is like a remembered song, low and steady. Perhaps she learned the dead by their footsteps. The newly arrived might walk unevenly, still expecting the weight of a body. The old dead might move like mist. Heroes might enter loudly, trying to bring fame across the boundary, only to discover that echoes behave differently below. Lovers might search the dimness for one another, calling names with all the tenderness that remained to them. Persephone would hear each kind of step and know how to turn her face. Perhaps she learned the rivers by mood. Styx, solemn with oaths no god should break. Acheron, thick with mourning. Cocytus, if we name it, the river of lamentation. Phlegethon, imagined in some traditions as a river of fire, terrible and purifying. Lethe, the river of forgetting, soft and dangerous in its mercy. To forget pain may be relief. To forget love may be another loss. A queen of such waters must understand the weight of memory and the kindness of release. Above, Demeter's rites kept the living tied to the earth. Below, Persephone's rule kept the dead tied to meaning. Between them, the world did not become easy, but it became bearable. A human being could look at a field after harvest and see not only emptiness, but preparation. A mother could light a lamp in winter and feel that the dark had been entered before by a goddess. A mourner could lay flowers on a grave and know that flowers belong to both Kore and Persephone. The pomegranate remains in the hand of the story, red and unresolved. It is one of the most beautiful symbols in Greek myth because it does not flatten into a single lesson. Its many seeds suggest fertility, but its color suggests blood and sunset. Its skin hides abundance, but must be broken to reveal it. It feeds, but it binds. It is sweet, but tart. Like Persephone herself, it belongs to more than one world. To eat it is to accept complexity. If the narcissus is the flower of being drawn downward by beauty, the pomegranate is the fruit of remaining connected after descent. One opens the ground, the other marks the return as partial. Together, they frame Persephone's transformation. A flower in the hand of Kore, a fruit on the tongue of Persephone. A beginning that did not ask her permission, and a later act that remains mysterious. The myth leaves both images shining in the half-dark. Demeter's grain offers a third image. Grain is ordinary enough to be overlooked and sacred enough to found a civilization. It must be cut, threshed, ground, mixed with water, and passed through heat before it becomes bread. Its path is full of endings that serve nourishment. This does not mean suffering is secretly good. It means the ancient imagination saw transformation everywhere and refused to separate daily food from divine mystery. So the table and the tomb are closer in this myth than modern minds may expect. Bread comes from buried seed. Flowers grow from soil enriched by what has fallen. Ancestors are honored so the living remember their place in a longer chain. Persephone's descent makes visible a truth the earth was always teaching. Life feeds on hiddenness. The world is not only what stands in sunlight. Much of what sustains us works below sight. For a sleep story, this matters because sleep is also a small descent. Each night, the bright mind loosens its grip. Names blur, rooms dissolve. The body becomes heavy, like a seed entering soil. We do not fear this every night because we have learned the rhythm. We trust that morning will come, though we cannot watch ourselves cross all the way through sleep. Persephone's path gives the night a mythic shape, downward, inward, hidden, then return. You might imagine Persephone walking through the dreams of winter sleepers, not as a figure who startles, but as one who passes quietly at the edge of vision. Her robe brushes the floor of a dark hall. In one hand, she carries a small lamp. In the other, perhaps, a pomegranate closed and whole. She does not wake the sleepers. She only reminds the deep mind that darkness can be inhabited with grace. Demeter, meanwhile, waits in the upper air. Waiting is not passive in this myth. It is a labor. The mother endures the months. The fields endure frost. The seed endures confinement. Waiting holds the place where return can arrive. Without waiting, reunion would find no one at the threshold. Demeter's patience is not gentle every day. Some days it is raw. Some days it is stern. But it keeps faith with the cycle. And faith is sometimes nothing more than remaining turned toward the road. When Persephone rises again, she brings no speech that explains everything. Spring does not explain winter. It answers it with green. The first crocus does not give a lecture on grief. It opens. Lambs do not justify the cold months. They stand on uncertain legs and breathe. Rivers do not apologize for freezing. They loosen and run. In the same way, healing may not explain the wound. It may simply begin to move through the body again, quietly, undeniably. This is the softness at the center of the dark story. Not that nothing is lost, not that every taking becomes fair, not that powerful gods were wise from the start. The softness is that life continues to make passages, love demands answer, grief can become ritual, the one who descends can become queen, the mother who mourns can become teacher, the field that lies empty can become bread again, the night that feels endless can become a place where roots prepare. And if there is melancholy here, let it be a restful melancholy, the kind that belongs to rain on stone and low music in another room. Let it loosen the need to solve everything. Persephone's myth has survived because it does not behave like a puzzle with a final key. It behaves like a season. You return to it in different weather and find different meanings waiting. Tonight, perhaps, it means that you may rest without disappearing. You may go inward without being lost. There is also the matter of names spoken carefully at night. Kore is a tender name, almost a veil, the name of the girl before the full story gathers around her. Persephone is heavier, resonant, fit for hymns and cautious prayers. Some ancient worshippers used titles instead of names, calling her the Maiden, the Holy One, the Mistress Below. A title can be a form of respect. It lets the divine remain partly hidden, the way a seed remains hidden until the season calls it. Demeter's name too carries earth in it for many listeners, though scholars may debate its oldest roots. She is mother in the broadest sense, not only to one daughter, but to the cultivated field, the stored grain, the human future made possible by harvest. When she loses Kore, the loss is personal first. It is not an abstract, agricultural symbol to her, yet because she is a goddess, the personal becomes universal. Her empty arms become empty fields. This is how myth magnifies ordinary feeling without making it less ordinary. A mortal parent knows the panic of a child out of sight. A farmer knows the dread of a crop failing. A village knows the terror of winter stores running low. The myth gathers these fears and gives them divine faces so that human beings can look at them, sing them, honor them, and survive them. The gods are larger than us, but their stories often carry the shape of our own hearts. Persephone's companions in the meadow are important because they show that loss can happen in the middle of community. She was not wandering in a wasteland, she was among friends, flowers, voices, and sunlight. The world was not visibly unsafe. That detail gives the story its ache. It also gives compassion to those who remain. The companions could not stop the opening earth. They could only remember, grieve, and tell what little they knew. Sometimes witness is all the living can offer. The meadow itself is never merely scenery. Meadows are places where cultivated land and wildness meet. Flowers grow without asking permission. Bees follow laws older than cities. Girls gather blossoms for play, ritual, and beauty. Then the ground opens, and the meadow reveals that wildness includes the road below. The same earth that holds violets also holds graves. The same place that gives delight can become a threshold. Myth lets both truths stand. When we imagine Hades' chariot, we can let the image remain distant and solemn. The horses are swift, but the narration need not chase them. For a sleep-bound telling, the moment passes like a dark cloud crossing the moon. There is fear, yes, and a cry carried upward. Then there is the closed grass, the abandoned flowers, the long echo. The story does not need harsh detail to be powerful. The quiet after the take-in is enough. In the underworld, time may not move as it does above. A day in shadow might feel like a year, or a year might pass with the stillness of one held breath. Persephone's learning, therefore, cannot be measured only by clocks. It is measured by the first time she stops flinching at a shade, the first time she asks a name, the first time someone newly dead calms because she is present. These are the hidden milestones of her queenship. One can imagine Hades' palace filled with treasures that do not glitter for vanity alone. Metals come from underground, gems sleep in rock before they are lifted into crowns, seeds swell in darkness, water gathers in hidden veins. Hades is wealthy because the earth's depths are wealthy. Yet wealth below is not the same as abundance above. Demeter's riches are bread, fruit, and living green. Hades' riches are mineral, secret, enduring. Persephone learns the difference and holds both in her gaze. When she returns to the upper world, the sunlight may almost hurt. Anyone who has left a dark room knows the first brightness can be overwhelming. So imagine Persephone blinking in winter light, smelling wind, hearing birds, as if they are impossible. Demeter's embrace anchors her. The earth's renewal begins not as spectacle, but as recognition. The world knows her. The soil knows the footstep of the one who has come back from beneath it. From then on, every spring contains a trace of the underworld, and every winter contains a trace of spring. This is the balance Persephone brings. Nothing is pure separation anymore. The living carry memories of the dead carry memories of sun. The seed carries the field that will be. The bare branch carries the leaf in secret. The myth invites us to trust these hidden traces, especially when the visible world seems stripped and still. So, when the listener rests inside this story, the mind can stop demanding a straight road. Persephone's road is curved. It descends, ascends, descends again. It is faithful not because it avoids darkness, but because it returns through darkness with meaning. The breath can follow this curve, inhale like spring, exhale like autumn, pause like winter, begin again. The body already knows a seasonal wisdom older than thought. Now return gently to the temple where we began. The lamp still burns in its small bowl. The painted figures on the wall are dim, but perhaps they seem clearer now. The woman with the torch is Demeter, searching. The girl with flowers is Kore before the meadow opened. The crowned figure in shadow is Persephone, no longer only lost, seated with calm eyes in the house below. Around them, wheat and pomegranate, narcissus and asphodel, spring and winter, all belong to one design, too old to be solved, but not too old to comfort. Outside, the autumn night has deepened, leaves rest on the temple steps. The fields are bare, yet not empty. Under the soil, seeds lie in darkness, and each seed is a small act of trust. It does not demand the sun tonight. It does not claw upward before its hour. It waits, wrapped in the language Persephone knows. It lets winter cover it. It lets silence do the work that brightness cannot do. Perhaps this is why the myth is good for night. It does not insist that darkness is secretly daylight. It lets darkness be dark. It lets loss be loss. It lets a mother mourn and a daughter change. But it also tells us that descent is not the whole story. Beneath the ground, there are roads. In the house of shadows, there is a queen. In the cold field, there is a seed. What has gone down may be changing in ways the waking mind cannot supervise. So, if you are tired, you may let yourself be winter for a while. You do not have to bloom in every season. You do not have to explain the hidden work of your own heart. You can rest like grain beneath frost, like a root in black soil, like a lamp protected from wind by careful hands. Persephone's story does not hurry you towards spring. It simply promises that spring is part of the pattern, even when tonight belongs to snow and sleep. Demeter will keep her torches, Hecate will stand at the crossroads, Hermes will remember the road, Helios will rise and see, Hades will hold the silent halls, Persephone will sit among the dead, with flowers hidden in her name, and far above, when the appointed time comes, the first green blade will pierce the earth so quietly that no one hears it happen. The world often returns like that, not with thunder, but with a tenderness too small at first to notice. Let the temple fade now. Let the lamp become a star, and the star become a seed of light behind your closed eyes. Let the old names drift away, one by one. Demeter, Kore, Persephone, Hades, Hecate, Hermes, Helios. Let them settle into the dark like offerings placed on cool stone. The story has done what it came to do. It has opened a gate, led you through, and brought you back more slowly than you left. Beyond the fields, winter is gathering its cloak. It is not an enemy tonight. It is a great quiet room where the world can sleep. The branches are bare because they have laid down their burdens. The earth is dark because it is keeping secrets. Somewhere below all visible things, Persephone understands the patience of roots. Somewhere above, Demeter dreams of reunion. Between them, the year turns and turns and turns, carrying every loss toward its season of return. Rest now at the edge of that turning. Let your breathing follow the slow wheel of the myth, rising, falling, rising again. Let the meadow be far away and safe in memory. Let the underworld be quiet and ordered beneath you. Let the pomegranate seeds shine like small red stars in the dark. Let winter become a blanket, not a wall. Let sleep come as Persephone comes to her throne, softly, inevitably, with deep knowledge and a calm, merciful hand. Good evening and welcome back, one last time, to the slow, gentle work of letting the story rest. Get cozy, settle in, and let us begin the long lowering of the lamp. The tale of Persephone has been carried by many tongues across the ages, by farmers waiting for spring, by mothers waiting for daughters, by priests at the threshold of the temple. In the beginning, before any of these tellings, there was only a quieter rumor of the descent and the patient return, a feeling that something loved could disappear into darkness and yet not be lost. The old poets later gave it names. They gave it Demeter, Kore, Persephone, and the long roads of the underworld kingdom. They gave it the long stillness in which it now rests. But that is a story for another day. For now, remember this. Tonight, the work of the tale is done. It simply was, like all old stories, the carrying of the seasons of grief and return through the long inheritance of nights. Let the names settle. Let the rooms settle. Let the night gather you up. Imagine the dim halls beneath the earth, far behind you, the slow turning of the seasons no longer pressing on your thoughts. In your mind, reach back and close an invisible door to the underworld, feeling it move on silent hinges, sealing the pomegranate seeds, the torches of Demeter, and the long passage between worlds in calm and order. Then see a single candle, its flame steady in the darkness. With a slow, gentle breath, blow that candle out and let the last curl of light fade into the night. Rest well, sleep deeply, and let the ancient stories carry you into the night.